Hi everyone, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Frostpunk The Board Game. Game designed by Adam Kwapinski and published by Glass Canon Unplugged.
Let's get to the game.
Frostpunk is a cooperative, scenario-driven survival game set in a frozen, post-apocalyptic steampunk universe. To win the game, players will be trying to survive while managing an entire society, exploring, meeting the needs of its population, constructing buildings, and most of all, keeping warm, using coal to fuel the huge generator that stands in the middle of this snow pit. With a lot going on in the game, I'm going to skip over setup and most of the components at the start of the video, and get us learning how to play as quickly as possible. The grid you see here represents the map. What you can see are the spaces we've discovered, and what's not yet placed is covered with snow. It's from these spaces that you'll be collecting resources, and on here that you'll be constructing buildings. The generator tower in the centre, which thematically heats up the entire map, also serves as a cube tower, with some randomness between which pieces go in through the top and come out through the bottom. However, except when we truly need it, I'll set this off to the side throughout the explanation. The game is fully cooperative, and you have a supply board which shows all of your team's shared resources and shared meeples that you'll use to take actions. Resources include wood, coal and steam cores. Trees are not resources. And meeples include engineers, workers and children. Your other resource is food, which is tracked on this separate board. All resources are gained to or lost or spent from this board. If the game tells you to lose resources and you don't have enough, lose only what you can. While if you ever need to spend resources, you must have them in order to spend them and gain the effect. The game is fully cooperative and players make their decisions as a team. One player will have the leader marker in each round, and this player can decide any ties between decisions. Frostpunk is scenario driven. You'll use a deck of cards for your scenario to unfold the story, and win the game when you encounter the words "You are victorious." You lose by maxing out any track that has a red skull and crossbones. There are many of these, overwhelming death, sickness, hunger, and so on. Essentially, if it sounds bad, it can probably cause you to lose the game. Frostpunk is played in rounds, and each round is played in a total of 9 phases. Most of your decision making takes place in the actions phase, with all other phases being either upkeep or having only a few small decisions. You'll skip the first 5 phases in the first round. Each board shows you which phase it's relevant to. First is the dawn phase, and this concerns the round tracker. In many cases, you'll simply advance the round marker 1 space. If the round marker meets a green scenario token, then this is a reminder you will previously have placed based on the scenario card. Go back to the card which told you to place it and resolve the corresponding effect. This will probably result in drawing another scenario card and progressing the story further. Keep all active scenario cards in a face-up display near the board. Some may have text which remains active and may trigger in future phases. Ignore the storm marker for now. This is resolved in the weather phase. Also note the type of citizen shown at the top of this column. This is the type of citizen you'll have to feed this round. Second is the morning phase, and here you'll draw and resolve the top card from the morning deck. This is a large deck of possible events which might occur in your society. If the card has unnumbered text, then you must resolve it. If the card has numbered options, then you must choose one of those numbered options to resolve. In some cases, all options will be available to you. In some cases, there's a prerequisite to choosing a certain option, and this will be shown in red. If you resolve an effect with the red X, then you discard the card from the game. But if you resolve an effect with this exclamation mark, Then add it to your active card display nearby to your scenario cards. It will have an effect that will resolve in a later phase. These cards can have many effects. Often you'll be instructed to add a specific card to the Dusk deck, in which case find it in the deck of red coloured Dusk cards and place it onto the Dusk deck on board number 7 without reading it. These represent a thematic consequence to the choice you've just made, and it will come back in a random future Dusk phase. Other effects include gaining or losing resources, food or population, or hope or discontent. Hope and discontent are tracked by the markers on this board, and this is a relatively involved board, so we'll pause for a moment to explain how this works. All blue tokens are hope, and there are 3 different types: care, justice, and motivation. Red tokens are discontent, and can be anger, apathy, or greed. All tokens of a certain type, if not on the track, are mixed up in their own cloth bags. Tokens on the track may be in 2 states: active, where the icon is white, or exhausted, where the icon is dark. As such, there are a lot of things to consider when managing these tracks. Active hope can often be spent as if it were a resource, flipping over a specific type to resolve an effect. Active discontent of certain types often triggers a specific bad effect. For example, something bad might happen if you have anger active on the track. And they also behave as simple tracks. If the discontent track ever fills up, whether they're active or exhausted, you lose the game. And if the hope track ever empties, you also lose the game. If an effect ever tells you to activate a hope or discontent, then flip one over from the exhausted to active side if you can. If an effect tells you to exhaust hope or discontent, flip one over to its exhausted side, again, if you can. The exception is if it's the cost of an action. In this case, it's like spending. You must do it to resolve the effect. If instructed to increase hope or discontent, you may either activate one of your exhausted tokens, or draw a random token from its bag and place it exhausted side up. To decrease hope or discontent, either exhaust an active token or return an exhausted token to its bag. If you are to increase hope or discontent of a specific type, let's say for example it said increase apathy, first draw a random token from its matching type of bag and place it on the exhausted side. Then activate the specific type of hope or discontent that was referenced, if able. As such, how good or bad this type of action will be will depend on the luck of the draw. Overall, there are a lot of considerations that you need to take when managing the hope and discontent of your society. Phase 3 is the generator phase. This is all about resolving the generator, and this is where the cube tower comes into play. The generator itself is all about heating up the board so that your population doesn't get sick when they take actions or sleep in the night phase. At any given time, a space on the map or a certain colour of building will be adequately heated if on this table it is below the position of your heat marker. The first thing you can do in the generator phase is fuel the generator. And to do this, spend any amount of coal to increase the heat marker the same number of steps. You can enter the space with the cold marker but not go past it. This is not the only time you can fuel the generator. In fact, it's the least likely time that you'd do so. The other times that you can fuel the generator are Phase 6, the action phase, and Phase 9, the night phase. After optionally fueling, check for sickness. Every marker between the heat marker and the cold marker represents one sickness. Here it would be to a worker. Move that sickness marker one step up the population track. We'll talk more about the implications of this later. Next, you'll check to see if the generator breaks. Take a number of coal cubes from the supply based on the position of your heat marker. Drop them into the top and then carefully remove the drawer, taking any cubes that fell out. and placing them onto the stress track, remembering that this could include cubes that were dropped in but didn't fall out in previous rounds. Then carefully return the drawer. Anything that falls down if you nudge it will count towards next round's stress. If after you're done there is one or more coal which has spilled over to this top space, then the generator breaks. The first time this happens, return all of this coal to the supply and resolve these effects, which are to advance the cold marker and each of these 3 building markers one step up the track, making them harder to heat. Then flip the heat token to its broken side. The second time this happens, the generator explodes and you lose the game. The final step is to reset heat to 0. You'll have to start heating everything up again by burning more coal. This is why the generator phase itself is the least likely time to spend coal to fuel the generator. In effect, it represents the end and reset of the heating cycle that started in the previous round. Fourth is the weather phase. Draw and resolve one card from the weather deck from top to bottom. This has 4 different and largely unrelated effects. Firstly, increase each of the heat markers by the amount shown here. Much like the generator breaking, this is going to make each of these buildings and locations more expensive to keep warm. It's only going to continue getting colder as the game goes on. Second, you'll gain an income of this much food from each of your traps, indicated by this icon. And in particular, you'll find these on Hunter's Hut buildings you've constructed. With this icon, you'll progress your expeditions. We haven't introduced those yet, so we'll come back to that later. Then finally, advance the storm marker on the round track this many spaces. At this point, if the storm marker is either on or behind the round marker, you resolve the storm card, which is a scenario card which was set aside at the start of the game. These will tend to have a somewhat ruinous effect on your weaker buildings that you'll build nearer to the start of the game. Fifth is the preparation phase, and this takes place in 2 main parts. Firstly, the advisor step, and then the population step, which is on this board. Each player begins the game with an advisor card, and this essentially represents your position in society. You are an advisor to the workers and engineers. In the preparation phase, one player may activate the power of their advisor. This always costs the exhaustion of a specific hope, and may give you the benefit you sorely need right now. Next, you'll resolve your population, and so let's step back and take a look at how the population part of this board works. Your society has 3 types of citizens: workers, engineers, and children. Workers do most of the actions. Engineers can also do most of the actions, but there are some specific actions open only to them. And generally speaking, children don't take actions. The population of each citizen in your society is indicated by this marker. The number of meeples on your supply board that this corresponds to is based on the section above where the population marker sits. Be very clear, this track represents citizens, these are meeples. If you can't keep your citizens or meeples warm, then you will gain sick citizens, and you track this by moving the corresponding type of citizen marker up the population track. As this sits now, I would have 12 engineers, 10 of whom are sick, and 22 workers, 6 of whom are sick. In the preparation phase, you resolve each of the positions of the sickness markers. Its effect is printed below its space on the population track. If at this stage any sickness marker is at 26 or above, then you lose the game. Otherwise, there are 2 types of negative effect. The meeple icon represents a spent meeple. Take a spent meeple token of the matching type, place it next to the supply board, and put one of the matching meeples onto it. You won't have this meeple for actions in this round. There are some other effects, for example mourning cards, which might give you a spent meeple. For each of these flip icons, flip over the corresponding sickness token. If it was on its syringe side, it will go to the gravely ill side. When the token flips from the gravely ill side back to the syringe side, then one of that citizen type has died. Move that population one step back and move the corpse marker one step forward. If this ever reaches 10, you lose the game. Then draw the top card from the citizen deck and resolve the death effect for that corresponding citizen type. Players also have a hand of these citizen cards, and if you don't want the luck, you can choose one from your hand and resolve its death effect. This always includes a loss of hope, and in the case of a child's death, a loss of 2 hope. You can never have more sick citizens than the population of that type of citizen. If you were ever to gain another sickness in this situation, instead flip the token over. If doing this causes a death, then both the population and sickness marker move back one step. When you finish the preparation phase and enter the action phase, this is the point that you make sure that all of your meeples match your population board. Gain or lose meeples if your population has changed, and make sure all spent meeple tokens are occupied. If you gain new spent meeples from this point forward, or if you didn't have enough meeples to fill all of your tokens, you'll simply hold them empty to resolve in the next round. Phase 6 is the actions phase. The team will take turns taking actions, and on each action you'll need to spend 1 meeple. You'll move the meeple to the actions location, which could be on the supply board, or it could be on the map. If the action has this icon, then the worker placed must be an engineer. Otherwise, you can use a worker or an engineer. Unless stated otherwise, children cannot take actions. As the game goes on, you may also have unlocked an automaton, and you can use an automaton for an action, but must pay 1 coal to do so. The benefit of these is that they don't eat and don't get sick. As part of your action, you can choose to play a citizen card from your hand. The card will tell you what meeple to use, where to place the meeple, and what the effect of the action will be. These often vary or make more powerful the actions present in certain locations, and allow you to take those actions with a different type of meeple. Finally, every action will be either heated or cold, and in some cases whether or not it's heated will depend on the generator track. To this end, you can fuel the generator, that is, pay any amount of coal to move up the same number of spaces on the track, as a free action before any action in this phase. In fact, in most cases, you'll probably burn most of your coal before your first action. For any cold action, you gain 1 sick citizen matching the meeple that took the action. There are 6 different actions: remove snow, gather resources, construct, use a building, deploy scouts, and special action. To remove snow, place the meeple here. This action is always cold, and it may be taken multiple times on the same round. Draw 2 tiles from the near deck, placing them both onto the map before revealing them, or draw and place a single tile from the far deck. Tiles must be adjacent to a tile already placed, and that does not include the outer rim. Place resources and trees on the newly flipped tile and gain food directly if shown. To gather resources, place the meeple onto any single space containing resources. There cannot be any other meeples present. A space is any trapezium-shaped region, so there's 2 on each hex and 5 around the generator. This region where the draw comes out of the generator is not considered a space. Check your location and check it against its position on the generator track to see whether this is heated or cold. In this case, we're on a near hex, and the near hex is below the heat marker, so this is a heated action. Then collect 2 resources to the supply. Trees are not resources. They cannot be gathered with this action. To take a construct action, place the meeple here. This can be taken multiple times per round and is always a heated action. With this action, you can take 3 construction sub-actions, which are to build a building or dismantle a building. To build, choose a building from the display board, paying its build cost shown in the circle, or if you've unlocked a building using a card, then pay the cost printed on the card. Then place the building onto any space that doesn't already contain a building or a meeple. If there are any resources or trees on the space, you destroy them. If a building is upgradable, indicated by diamonds next to its name only on the upgraded side, then place it unupgraded. Double-sized buildings must be placed over both spaces of the same hex. To dismantle a building, choose any one building that does not have a meeple on it and does not have this cannot dismantle red X icon. Then return it from the map to the supply. Space is limited on the map and you'll often want to get rid of your less useful buildings as the game goes on. The next action is use a building. Place a meeple onto one space of the building you're using. Each space can only occupy one meeple. That means that a double-sized building could be used twice in a round by 2 meeples. Check the generator board to see whether the action is cold or heated. The hothouse, for example, has orange insulation and is on the near ring. As long as at least one of those 2 conditions is heated, then the action is heated. Here, the near ring is cold, but orange insulation is heated, so this action is good. Likewise, yellow insulation on the generator tile would be heated, but yellow insulation on the near or far tiles would be cold. There's a large range of buildings, and I'll cover some but not all of them. Many are quite simple, either gaining or exchanging resources. You'll need to use these and have a good network of them extensively to survive. This building lets you maintain the generator. Remove 5 cubes from the stress track, or spend a steam core to remove them all. The first time you take this action, you also place the upgrade cross into the generator, giving you another hold up to catch cubes. The gathering post is a more efficient way of gathering resources, allowing you to gather 1 resource from each adjacent space. This is defined as the other space on the same hex, both spaces on each adjoining hex, so here both of these, this one, and this one, and any spaces on the generator tile which touch the gathering post's hex, so this one here. The workshop helps with technology and buildings. When you first construct a workshop, you'll choose a technology card to begin developing. You'll have had 4 of these placed randomly during setup. Take its development token and then place it a number of steps ahead of the current round based on the card. Then when you activate the workshop, you can take 2 sub-actions, develop or upgrade. To develop, move the technology marker 1 step backwards. When these 2 markers meet, whether it's in the dawn phase or action phase, that technology is complete. You'll flip it over to its white active side and immediately choose your next technology to develop. The effect of your active technology is now available. To upgrade, choose an empty upgradable building, that is one with no meeple and no diamonds, pay its upgrade cost shown here in gold, and flip the building over. The sawmill is your primary way of harvesting trees. Unupgraded, it turns a tree on its hex into 3 wood for your supply, and when upgraded, it can also target neighbouring hexes. Medical buildings let you cure or treat the sick. Curing lets you reduce your number of sick citizens, and treating lets you flip them back from the gravely ill side without causing death. The coal thumper generates 3 coal on each of 3 adjacent spaces for you to go and gather. Maximum coal per space is 5. The coal mine simply generates 4 coal, but it must be placed adjacent to the coal deposit, which is randomly placed on the rim of the board during setup. The wall drill works the same way for wood. Shelters have no action, but you'll need to build enough to house all of your meeples, or risk getting sicknesses in the night phase. Cemeteries let you bury your corpses. Factories allow you to build automatons. Buildings with a white band cannot be activated with meeples. They either have an ongoing passive ability or a once-off ability when constructed. The platform is a critical building which allows you to pass a new law. In setup, you'll receive a deck of 12 different law cards, some of them with positive effects for your society and some perhaps less so. Choose any one of these 12 laws that you wish to put into effect, and put it with your scenario and event cards. If there is an incompatible law, here for example LO1 is incompatible with LO2, then discard the incompatible one from the game. Find the 2 matching cards from the purple Law Consequence Dusk deck. Randomly choose one and add it to the Dusk pile. Once again, your choices will have consequences later. Laws once passed are permanent and you can have a maximum of 4. The last building I'll show you is the Beacon, and this has the passive ability that it unlocks the next action, Deploy Scouts. Deploying scouts sends them on expeditions in search of more resources and population. This action is always heated and cannot be taken by an automaton. Next to the board you'll have 3 expedition draw decks, A, B and C, and then you'll have some number of expeditions. Each could be a single card or several overlapping. To take the action, place the meeple onto the very bottom space of an expedition with no other meeples on it. A beacon lets you have 1 active expedition, an upgraded beacon lets you have 2. The rest of your expedition is resolved in the weather phase, when you draw this card and move any expeditioning meeples this many steps along their tracks. When the meeple reaches the top space, there are 2 options. The first is to skip. You don't explore that space, and you draw the top card of the next letter up, overlapping it over the expedition and moving immediately to the bottom space of the new card. If you had leftover movement, continue to use it. Your second option is to stop and explore, and if you do this you lose any excess movement. Flip over the card and then choose one of the options. If you choose an option with a turn back arrow, then simply gain the benefits shown and return your worker to the supply. You have returned with whatever you found. Then take the top card matching the letter shown, flip the card back over and overlap in the way we saw before. If you choose to take an option with a blue arrow, then you're going to gain what's shown there, but you're also going to continue your expedition. Again, take the next card showing this letter and overlay it like so, putting your meeple back on the bottom space of the track. Only once you choose or are forced to choose a turn back option do you then gain the benefits shown on all of your flipped up cards. In this way, as you explore, you're carving a path through the mountain. Each time you reach the end of a track, a new card gets added, and all those who follow after you have the opportunity to shortcut the first path that you carved. The further you explore, the richer the benefits will be. But any worker who's stuck out on an expedition track is not available for taking actions in the actions phase. The last action is a special action, and this is anything that's printed on one of the cards in your event display. The action space for the meeple is on the card and shows you which type of meeples can be used. Automatons can never substitute. Special actions are always once per round, or once per game if it says so on the card, and the actions are always heated. Phase 7 is the Dusk phase, and similar to the Morning phase, you will draw and resolve 1 card from the deck. The difference is that while the Morning phase draws from a huge deck of random events, the Dusk deck is very small. It starts the game with only a card called the Inevitable and a Social Dispute. You'll then add to it the consequences of any other actions you've taken. Shuffle the deck, draw a card, and resolve. Like the morning cards, these may either be discarded from the game or added to your event display. If it has neither of these icons, then you will discard it. In the round in which a yellow social dispute card is resolved, you'll resolve its effect, which is typically very related to the hope and discontent tracks. Remove this card from the game, replace it with the next social dispute card, and then shuffle the Dusk discard pile back into the Dusk deck. Phase 8 is the hunger phase. This track at the bottom of the population board shows your current amount of food and your current amount of hunger, and each of these tokens can flip over and go to a maximum of 50. Any hunger that you have at the start of this phase represents the hunger of the people you were supposed to feed in the previous round. Here, for example, I have 7 hungry children. You must now spend food equal to your hunger to reduce hunger to 0. If your hunger exceeded your food, then you spend as much food as you can and then resolve the negative effect of the hunger marker's space. If hunger at this point is 25 or more, then you lose the game. Otherwise, the penalty will be discontent and a number of deaths of that citizen type. After resolving the negative effect, reduce hunger to 0. Now feed this round's citizens. Simply spend 1 food for each population of that citizen type. If you come up short, add 1 hunger for each deficiency. You'll now have a chance to deal with this issue at the start of next round's hunger phase. Finally, it's the night phase. Return all meeples from action spaces and the map to your supply. Also return any meeples from spent meeple tokens to your supply and discard those tokens. Keep unfilled tokens to suffer next turn. It's only expeditioning meeples who don't return. Now look for heated shelters in which the meeples can sleep. A shelter is anything with these meeple icons, and there are 2 sleeping slots in each of these shelters. Check the generator board to make sure each of these is heated. It follows the same rules as taking an action on a building, and you can use this opportunity to fuel the generator. Suppose in this instance I wasn't able to heat this tent, and that would give me 8 total sleeping slots. Lie down meeples until you've run out of sleeping slots. These meeples get a good night's sleep, and each standing meeple gains 1 matching 6 citizen. You'll then proceed to the dawn phase of the next round. If you can work through all of the scenario cards and reach text which says that you are victorious, then you win the scenario. You can lose in 7 different ways. If the discontent track completely fills, if the hope track completely empties, if the corpse track reaches 10, if the generator breaks down twice, if after the advisor step of the preparation phase, any one sickness marker is at 26 or above, if after resolving the previous round's hunger in the hunger phase, hunger is 25 or above, or if a scenario card tells you that you lose. But with a bit of luck, you can stay out of the cold and lead your society to victory. And that's how to play Frostpunk. We hope you enjoyed this video.
If you find this video useful, please help us by hitting the like button. Subscribe to us. You can also hit the meeple in the corner to do that, and hit the bell icon so you'll know when we have new videos. You can also follow me on Instagram for my board games journey.
Comments, suggestions and feedback are all welcome in the comment section below.
Thanks for watching. See you next time.